Why should I recycle or care or try to do it well or better than I do today? Well, this is an R&D video, so it's always about what we can do as individuals to improve our lives or change our lives or do experiments. And that is exactly what today is about. The act of recycling. How to do it better. So, the why. Number one, because we should be responsible for the choices that we make in our lives. Number two, because it's required by law and for good reason. It saves our communities money and it keeps materials that were painstakingly dug up from the ground from going to waste. Number three, because it saves tremendous amounts of energy, and this is one of the primary global problems affecting the world today. Global warming is mostly an energy crisis. And thus, number four, you save water and carbon emissions from the processes of creating these materials in the first place. And number five, because it makes you aware of your actions and their causes and effects. It makes you realize the importance of your individual actions on the world that you live in, even if it's just within your own small world. Something we rarely think of because we live in a financial economy that's focused only on dollars and currency is something like the cost and energy to produce something as simple and ubiquitous as this plastic bottle. It might take anywhere from 400 watt hours to a kilowatt hour to make just one plastic bottle, which is crazy if you understand the amount of energy that is. Recycling this and reusing this plastic could save several hundred watt hours of energy. I know a lot of people don't understand what that really means, but we should, and that should be a focus of this channel. It was the reason for its original inception, but you could just imagine that doing this yourself, putting in that kind of energy, could take you several hours or maybe a whole day's worth of physical work. It's a lot for just one plastic bottle. We should try and save as much of that energy as we can because it's stupid to waste energy. You would never do it yourself because you externalize most of the energy needs you have to other things like electricity or gas and oil. But if we had to pay these prices as humans like we have through most of our history, we wouldn't make these choices. That's part of the miracle of modern life, but it's also part of the massive problem that we're in right now. So how can we reduce our impact and the cost of our choices as individuals on the world around us? Recycling is one great way to do this, and it's so foundational. We consume so much stuff in modern society, but how much focus do we put on actually making sure that we're recycling it right? Let's take a look and see what we can do. So one thing that I hear over and over from people is that recycling is hard. And it is hard if we never look into the process and try and increase our knowledge and capabilities of what's happening here. But like I said, it's such a fundamental process to our individual lives. We are consumers. We should be great at recycling. So one of the reasons why recycling is hard is because it's different in basically every location you are. Whether you live in a different state or a different country, there are going to be different rules and regulations. And that's for good reason, because all of these materials need to go somewhere and be processed in a facility which will have different capabilities. But recycling can be much easier just by increasing your knowledge. This common bottle, most people probably understand is recyclable. We know what the material is. It's plastic. So where does this go? It goes in your recycling bin, right? Wrong. To understand recycling better, we should keep in mind that there are different types of recycling. There's single stream recycling, the blue bin in the US, where you throw everything in and it gets sorted all together at one materials facility. An MRF, Materials Recovery Facility. There's also dual stream, where you would separate things like paper, cardboard, these types of things out from the rest of the recyclable materials. And there's a third type of recycling, and that's source separated. When I lived in Stockholm, that's what all of the recycling was in that municipality. And redemption programs are a type of source separated recycling. When you take this plastic bottle and put it in its proper location, which is with other PET plastic bottles of the same type, they're able to take that material as a bale and create much higher quality recycled plastic with it. And that's something to keep in mind about recycling. A lot of what we call recycling ends up being downcycling. But the real idea of recycling is to take a material and create another one of the same quality from that source material. But a lot of times we're not able to do that. And that has a lot to do with the types of collection that we do: single stream, dual stream, or source separated. So where does the common plastic bottle go? It requires a little more effort on your part to bring it to a bottle redemption center, or make sure that it gets there through charity donations, or in my local transfer station, they have a separate bin for putting these bottles. But it makes a difference because they're able to use this to make higher quality recycled plastic. This is a recycled plastic container that's probably only food grade because it was used with higher quality source materials. When you put this in with your blue bin, there's a chance that it will get put together as a bale that's much less higher purity than these will be when they go to a redemption center. So, redemption center. And it's the same thing with the aluminum can. It shouldn't go in your single source recycling bin. It should go into the bottle redemption bin. You're saving energy. You're reducing your impact on the world around you. They don't need to dig up more material. Aluminum, infinitely recyclable, not downcycled. Same thing for glass drinking bottles. Redemption programs where they exist, although I find glass to be exceedingly hard to recycle. And in my state of Massachusetts, the materials recovery facilities actually tried to remove their responsibility to recycle glass altogether because it's so hard to sort in single stream recycling, and it's often just getting downcycled. There's something to keep in mind also about glass, and that's that it's really just the food and drinking containers that are recyclable, at least in the US that I'm aware of, or Massachusetts specifically where I am, but I think that it's similar across the country. Again, this is a place where source separated materials are so valuable. Glass needs to be clear in order to be recycled into more clear glass. So colored glass needs to be sorted with like colored glass. I won't throw these. So that type of recycling is easy, at least it's easy to identify. But don't get mixed up with recycling other types of glass, like glass and ceramic plates, other types of glasses like Pyrex, cooking ware, these types of things, broken window glass, mirrors, for example. These things are not recyclable, at least not in Massachusetts and not in the US that I'm aware of. There may be places that collect them and do something with them, but they don't go in your single stream or dual stream or probably even source separated if it exists anywhere in the US recycling bins. So let's move on to the pizza box. First of all, Antonio's Pizza by the Slice in Amherst, Massachusetts, probably one of the greatest pizzerias in the world. I'm just saying it's true. Second of all, the common pizza box. It's been common knowledge that pizza boxes are not recyclable for a long time, so many people are still catching up to the latest news that they are recyclable. You just need to remove the wax sheet, if there is one, and remove any food residues. The oil, the grease that remains in the container on this cardboard is actually okay. There's been studies that show that material can be up to 30 to 40% saturated with grease and oil and still be recycled in the paper mills. So it's not something that you would like. Again, it's not ideal, but it can still be recycled and used. Ideally, you live in a place that has dual stream recycling and you can separate your cardboards and your paperboards and your paper from the rest of the materials because they can get a higher quality bale of paper to pass on to the mills. And paper mills are desperate for new material. And that's why they've continued to expand their recycling operations and take new materials that they haven't recycled properly in the past. And we'll get to that. First of all, pizza box, yes, recycle it. So the other paper materials that I was talking about, is this recyclable? It's paper, right? No, it's not just paper. It's a composite. Inside this paper is a lining. It's either wax or a plastic. And this is in a lot of food grade containers. And this makes paper not recyclable. Or to be more specific, most paper mills are not capable of recycling this type of paper. But that is changing. For example, I found a few paper mills in the US, not many, literally just a handful, that can start to take paper cups, which is probably something you're more familiar with. Because regular paper, office paper, has been such a huge source of recycling material for the paper mills, and the paper material industry is on the decline with the digital economy, they need to find new sources. And so they've been forced to increase their recycling capabilities and start to take these things. But this is still not recyclable in most places. It's not recyclable in Massachusetts. It has to go in the trash. Running low on paper material here. 1 second. Here we go. Here's another paper product. Now this is a freezer paper container. Now this is a container for freezer food. And this particular container came with chicken tenders inside of a plastic bag. So in this case, they did not line this paper with any plastic or wax, at least not that I can tell. But this is something you have to be on the look for, because most food containers that contain food directly will be lined. And so in most states, they will say that any freezer food boxes are not recyclable. I would say that this is recyclable, again, because the food came in a plastic bag. But there's an important saying in the recycling world: when in doubt, throw it out. It's better not to contaminate the bales of recycling that we create by sorting these things and get higher quality material to pass along to the recyclers than it is to try to recycle something that isn't actually recycling. And this can be a hard thing to deal with. It's like, well, this is probably recyclable, so I should probably recycle it. I would love to recycle it. But if you're not sure, I just threw it at my computer. If you're not sure, throw it out. Here's another great example of not recyclable. This was a takeout food container. It is shiny. It is clearly waxed. That is trash. Pasta food container has the little plastic wrap. Of course, it's great if you would remove it. It probably takes, I don't know, 5 seconds. I didn't get it all. Maybe it takes 7 seconds. Here's a point that I would like to make on the side. Sometimes doing things the best way requires a little bit more of our time. I will waste 7 seconds in my day times 1,000. If this makes this material a little bit more recyclable, increases the quality of the outcome of whatever product this will become, I don't see why it's not worth doing. But most people won't put in that little bit of energy. And I think we should evaluate this within ourselves, because I think this mentality bleeds into many other practices in our lives. Another point. These things should be flattened and broken down. Recycling. Crinkly film. Trash. We'll get to that. Here's another fun one. You would think this is paper. It has food in it, so you probably know where this is going. It is lined with some sort of wax or plastic. Not recycling. Here's another thing, same deal. Oatmeal container. Yep, it's paper. It's not recyclable. This plastic, we'll get to. Ice cream bin. You're getting the idea, right? It's not paper. It's holding food. It's lined with a wax or a plastic substance on the inside of it. It's probably not recyclable in your area. Trash. Ice cream container. Trash. Paper egg carton. Recyclable. Thought I had a good example of this somewhere. Aha! Yes, this. Also another composite material. Paper on the outside, yes. Metal, aluminum on the inside. Both recyclable materials, but when you put them together into one product, it forms a new composite product. The recycling facilities have to be able to pull these things apart and properly separate them to recycle them. This is not recyclable. I've been collecting these samples for a while, and I'm so happy to be getting done with them. Here's a nice example of something that's actually labeled recyclable, just like a box. It's true. Even the bit of mailing labels and any bit of glue that would be on it, it's okay. Paper mills can deal with it. Recyclable. Looks like a paper recyclable product, right? This is something that hay came in for guinea pigs. However, it had food in it, and I can see that it is a bit shiny and it is lined. If you look at most recycling guides, you'll see that pet food bags are not recyclable. A lot of them are plastics. This one's paper. It's trash. Paper grocery bag. Obviously recyclable, right? Some of our instincts are still correct. More paper stuff. So here's something. Yes, it's made out of paper. It's a tissue, or in this case, toilet paper. It's not recyclable for two reasons. One, it might be contaminated with food and other things like that. They don't want it. They don't want food waste in your recycling bins, period, flat out. That's compost. But number two, the fibers that make up this tissue paper are too short to be used in recycling. So tissues, toilet paper, it's not recyclable. It's trash. Or compost it if you can. Speaking of compostable, here's an example of a cup that is compostable. It says right on it, commercially compostable only. So you need to make sure you check with your local facility if they can actually handle compostable cups like this. Again, you need to dig in and do your own research on where you live. You need to solve this problem for yourself because it's different everywhere. But remember, if this were a paper cup, it would be composite, lined with a wax or plastic substance, and thus not recyclable in most areas. Just because this is compostable does not mean that it is recyclable. In fact, if something is compostable, you can almost guarantee that it is not recyclable, because they can't take the risk that a compostable material is reused in a new product. The materials in compostable plastics, for example, they can't take that risk because they're not as stable as the regular plastics. They can't risk using that material in new products. So if it's compostable, remember this, it's probably not recyclable. I don't have a way to compost this, and thus, even though it says it's compostable, it's trash. There's nothing wrong with putting a material in the correct place. By putting trash in the trash bin, one, you recognize, okay, I've bought a material and brought a material into my life. This is the end of its lifespan. Maybe I should avoid those types of materials in the future. And two, by correctly sorting them, we create higher quality recyclable material. The source bales from those recycled materials will be higher quality, fetch higher prices, and be able to be reused and actually recycled and not just downcycled. This is just a paper cup. Trash, right? Here's another interesting one. These, if they're not paper, make sure you remove them if you're recycling a paper bag. It takes, again, 5 seconds. Do things the right way. These are actually paper, so they could have stayed on, but I wanted to make a point. So we've done a lot with papers so far, but I want to switch into plastics. So here is a mixer material. A mailer. It's paper on the outside, but it's plastic on the inside. Both of these materials would be recyclable on their own, but together they form a composite material which cannot be recycled and is trash. If you could pull this apart, you would find a paper still lined with wax and plastic. It's not going to work. It's just trash. Just try and avoid these types of mailers if you're choosing them yourself. However, these types of mailers, which are all plastic and are bubble wrap patterned on the inside, are okay to be recycled, but they do not go in your single source recycling bin. They are not single stream recycling or dual stream recycling. In the US, this is plastic film. It has to be recycled separately. It's not going to your normal recycling facility. It's being collected in places like grocery stores, and our transfer station as well has a separate bin for plastic film. To my knowledge, there's only one sourcer of this material in the US, that's Trex. They make composite decking material, wood replacement products, and they reuse this plastic film in those products, which is great. Hopefully Trex doesn't go out of business. Hopefully there are other sourcers of this material, but to my knowledge, they're the biggest one that drives this, at least on the East Coast of the US. Plastic film, not single stream recycling. This goes in a separate collection, just like the aluminum cans and the plastic bottles that are redeemable for money. You need to separate this from the rest of your recycling and deal with it separately. That's the way it is. You should do the right thing. Separate. Now, when it comes to the rest of the plastic recycling, they will tell you to ignore things like the plastic identification code on the bottom, which tells you which type of plastic it is. More about that later. And instead focus on the type and shape of the thing in front of you. Tubs, jars, bottles. This type of container is generally recyclable, at least in Massachusetts, but I think this perpetuates across more of the country as well. So the jugs, the tubs, the containers, the bottles, these are recyclable. Except this guy, black plastic. Because of the way they sort plastics in the MRF, the MRF, the Material Recovery Facility, they can't scan black plastics and identify them correctly. So in most places, black plastics are not recyclable and they are trash. Yes, this is why recycling seems hard, but once you know these things and you know the reason for them, it's really not hard. It's just something you have to learn. This is life. We learn things and then we know them and then we can make the correct decisions, right? However, newer facilities use different sorting mechanisms. They can use a laser, for example, to correctly identify this. And so where I live right now, even though in most of Massachusetts this would not be recyclable, I know that my specific material recovery facility can correctly sort this. So this is also recycling for me, but be on the lookout for black plastics. Here's another one of interest. Normally they'll say if you have the cap to something, you should screw it on and then it is recyclable. And the reason for that is because most caps, like a bottle cap, will fall through the filters in the recycling center. So when they are sorting them, they will fall through and then they will get sent to the trash. The general size that they recommend is a 2x2. So 2 inches by 2 inches, about the size of a credit card, they say, even though that's not 2x2. Something like this shouldn't fall through the recycling center filters, but I don't know. I've not been to one. I have not worked in one. I would love to learn more about these kind of border case plastics where it looks like it should be okay, but technically they will tell you to throw this away. So what should you do? When in doubt, you should throw it out. It's a bit silly. You should always understand the reasons for these things, but if you don't, follow other people's advice that know more about them than you do. Here's a great plastic to examine. You see a lot of these, holds a lot of food. This is not recyclable. The closest thing that this would be is the plastic film that we talked about, but identifying the type of film that you can recycle has a lot to do with whether it is stretchy. So I can push my finger through it. It's a stretchy material. This plastic I could take to the film recycling, and Trex will recycle it or downcycle it into composite wood products. I cannot recycle stuff in a bag in most places, although I have seen places like New York City, their recycling does accept this. But you need to take the products out of a bag. Don't put your stuff in a bag. This should be recyclable. I'm not sure. It's polypropylene. It's a perfectly recyclable plastic, but it's not one of the more recycled plastics economically. When in doubt, you should throw it out. This is a single-use plastic. It's trash. Never even got a use. Again, plastic film has to be recycled separately from your single-stream recycling. This, push my finger through it. It's okay. It's plastic film. Again, going to Trex to become composite lumber. Here's an example of a plastic film which is not desirable. Hear how loud it is? It's not stretchy. It probably tears. Tears kind of like paper. This is trash. This is not plastic film. It's important to identify the things that are trash. Do not contaminate the recycling stream. Okay, see all this stuff? It's not recyclable. This is trash. This is not the type of plastic they are looking for. Trash. This is not a plastic film, obviously. It's not a tub, jar, container. Goodbye. This, again, same thing. Goodbye. This is a coffee bag. You might also see this it's more common in the US, little puffy plastic bag. Sometimes made of paper. It's not recyclable. Goodbye. Plastic packaging from products that have been purchased. It's not recyclable. Tubs, jars, bottles. This is not it. Trash. Plastic packaging, trash. Here's kind of an interesting one. It's an unlabeled plastic. You know, they would say that you can recycle something that looks like a tub. To me, this is tub-like, but it has no resin code identifier on it to show the type of plastic. Let's talk about that. I don't know if you can see this. You can see the triangle that looks exactly like the chasing arrows, which is actually a symbol that does denote that something is recyclable. To get the chasing arrows recyclable symbol, your product must be recyclable in 60% or more of municipalities around the US. This is just a plastic resin code identifier. A lot of people still see this and think, oh, it's recyclable. No, I think it's useful to know the different types of plastics because some of them are very in demand and desirable compared to others. This is 100% post-consumer recycled plastic, which is pretty cool. I think that this gives you more reason to buy the product that is in this thing. It might not be great to buy something that comes in a tiny piece of packaging like this, but it is nice to support companies that are trying to do the right thing. And this is still recyclable. This one too. But back to this, which has no resin code and is a funky plastic. To me, this is trash, and I just come to that conclusion from having studied lots of the different plastics and containers, and I seriously doubt that this is being recycled. When in doubt, throw it out. So here are just a few more examples of funny things. Remember, the screening and filter in your materials recovery facility has a size of items which will fall through and then be sent to the trash. So small recyclable items that are tubs are probably not recyclable in this case. They want larger, clean plastic tubs. This is too small. This is trash. This, known as the Tetra Pak, is a juice container. It is definitely a composite. It is paper, it is metal, it is plastic. It should not be recyclable under the guidelines we've talked about in this video because composites are not usually recyclable. However, they do have an arrangement with the facility where I'm living today to recycle these types of containers. But across most of Massachusetts, these are not recyclable. It's not that they cannot, it's the volume is too low. If they try and collect these in the materials recovery facilities, they end up waiting a long time before they actually create a bale of these and ship them off. It takes up space. It's not economical for them. It's a sad reality that mostly these will go in the trash. A few metal things. Where I live, they mostly will only take aluminum. So if you have clean aluminum foil, which again is not a composite, so this is aluminum, this is a composite. This is a top to a yogurt container, and the print that they have on here makes this a composite material. You can just feel the difference between these two things. These all feel quite similar. This is decidedly different. This is trash. Lids to yogurt tops, stuff like that. This is all recyclable. However, when you recycle things like this, you should collect the material and ball them up so that, again, they don't fall through the small item filters at the recycling facility. This stuff, recyclable. Even bigger ball would be great. Stuff like this, cookie tins, you will have to check on your local recycling website. And you should hopefully have one where you can quickly look up the most common items and get an answer. This, in my facility, is recyclable, but it may not be in yours. And most metal products that aren't aluminum foils are not recyclable. Here's an interesting one, the paper receipt. You would think that this is just paper, but somehow they manage to coat this in plastic oftentimes. So this is generally not recyclable. Trash. Now there are lots of other items you'll come across that don't fall into the exact categories we've talked about today. You may not remember the stuff that I've told you. I'm sure that you will not. It's a lot of information, but hopefully a few things stick with you. First of all, when in doubt, throw it out. Although I hope that as you start to become a more conscious recycler, you maybe have more curiosity about these things and you set them aside and try and look them up and find out if they are recyclable or not, and why not. The why is much more important than the action. Don't be someone that just does what you do. Know why you're doing it. That is such an important piece of philosophy in life, in your life, to the success of your life. Things that are compostable are generally not recyclable. It's just the nature of the material itself, especially with the plastics. Small items will probably fall through the filters in your local recycling sorting facility. They say 2 inches by 2 inches, about the size of a credit card, will probably fall through the screen. So think about the size of the items. Generally, they want clean, dry jugs, jars, tubs, that sort of shape when it comes to plastics. And that's another thing to re-emphasize. They should be clean. They don't have to be crazy clean, but you should wash them out, rinse them out, and get rid of the food residues, and that it's not too oily. 1, it adds weight, which adds to transportation costs, and 2, it can contaminate the other materials that sit beside it. So in single stream recycling, when they dump all that stuff in the back of a collection truck or your local compactor at the transfer station and smush it all together, all of the disgusting stuff will go all over everything else, especially the paper products are at risk here, which is why dual stream recycling facilities are so much better, create a higher quality end product, and fetch higher prices, even though they've gone out of style. They do require higher collection costs and more sorting bins, for example, and people need to put in more effort to sort them between the two buckets. I think this should not be an issue for someone in society today. Again, I think we need to take more responsibility for our choices in life and do things the best we can and try and continually do better. So I hope this video has helped you at least see some of the different decision-making criteria for recycling. And I hope you become more curious about this practice and try and get better and better at it. Like all things in my own life, I can focus on it for a little while and then I need to do the things, and I will always have more questions and forget things. But the next time I come back and ask those questions again, it will be from a much more knowledgeable state. I'm on my way up in life. It's okay if I don't just go from here to there and am the best immediately. It's all about incremental progress. Start incrementally getting better at your recycling today, and you will lower your impact on the world around you, reduce your costs for choices that really only affect you. We don't want to just be mindless consumers. We want to be knowledgeable contributors to society. People that care about reducing the costs for our own individual actions. It's important. It's a part of your meaning on the planet and the meaning of your life. It's a part of a healthy society. It's a part of a functioning society. And it's something that we're losing continually to things that promise that we don't need to think about these things. So that's it. Please go recycle just a little bit better today. We've talked about the trash. This is the other end of it. Don't let things get to the trash that don't need to. Don't help support a world that makes us dig up more and more materials from the earth in order to do things that we could have done with the materials we've already dug up. Try and recycle with the highest quality you can because it saves real energy in the form of watt hours to produce more materials, and it reduces our commitment to things like oils and chopping down more forests and things of this nature. It keeps materials from being downcycled instead of recycled. That is, turned into products of the same quality instead of products of lower quality that will eventually just become trash. Whew. This video took a long time to make for no reason other than the stuff behind me and trenches and lots of other things outside. I'm so glad to have finally finished it. I hope you learned something. I'm sorry that I couldn't put more time into it, but I needed to finish this now, and so it is what it is. See you guys in the next one. Freezer food containers. Mixed packaging, composite materials with metal on the inside, Tetra Paks, juice containers. In Sweden, all of these things are being recycled. If it's more than 50% paper, they're probably going to get it. But you know, the efficiency of market economies and all that. Instead of trying to make rules around things that people actually feel good and care about. Hey! You're part of it!